Is the Persian language also the national language of some other countries at the moment?
Yes, in Afghanistan and in Tajikistan. Um, this is another thing that causes confusion because I've heard and I've seen many people assume that in Tajikistan and in Afghanistan they call the Persian language Tajik and Dari. Tajik in Tajikistan and Dari in Afghanistan. But these are, to be honest with you, these are just really political terms for the same language. We don't call the English language spoken in Canada or Britain or Australia, you know, by a different term. It's English, right? You know, I, a Persian speaker from Iran has a much easier time understanding a Persian speaker from Tajikistan than a Canadian and an Australian sometimes, but people are not gonna start calling. They don't say, "Oh, Australian is not English." They don't give it another name, right? Like we can easily understand one another. If I speak to somebody from Tajikistan, as well as a large communities within Uzbekistan, because uh, as you know yourself, being from Lithuania, a lot of the former Soviet republics, the boundaries are just very randomly drawn. They're not based on where like ethnic or people who speak certain language are living. So Uzbekistan today, the boundaries of Uzbekistan, a huge part of it is uh, drawn to include the Tajik speaking communities, which technically should be part of Tajikistan. But I mean, I don't want to get too political here. But the point I was trying to make is that in Uzbekistan as well, there are cities where the majority of the people are native Persian speakers. And we can also like communicate with them, even though it's not the official language of Uzbekistan. It is spoken by the majority in certain parts of the country.
Well, that explains a lot to me because actually my girlfriend's father grew up in Tajikistan. He was not originally from Tajikistan, but due to the world wars and Nazism and other kind of situations happening in Europe at that time, he and his family moved away and settled in Tajikistan. And he
Mhm.
had stories about some of his relatives that would always go. They were like traders, and they would go through different countries and just change the hats and pretend they're locals. And just because the languages were quite similar, and they were able to learn the differences between each language, they could pretend as though they were locals and get some benefits from doing that. So I always I always found the story very entertaining and very fun, and now I do understand the background of it a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many different um, ethnic groups, but they're also at the same time very much connected with each other. They share a common root, although the languages have, diverged and become different, they do share the same root, and that's why a lot of times they can understand a lot of what the other side is saying, but they may not be able to speak the other language. But that goes the same. That it's the same with a lot of different Iranian languages, where if I hear somebody speak the language, I can probably understand what they're saying for the most part or the context, but I wouldn't really be able to speak back to them in the language. I can speak Persian and they'll probably understand what I'm saying.